You're listening to 15 Minutes, where we feature community leaders sharing what the rest of us should know but likely don't. Hi, Chad Franzen here, one of the hosts of Share Your Voice, where we talk with top-notch law firms and lawyers about what it takes to grow a successful law practice. This episode is brought to you by Gladiator Law Marketing, delivering tailor-made services to help you accomplish your objectives and maximize your growth potential. To have a successful marketing campaign and make sure you're getting the best ROI, your firm needs to have a better website and better content. Gladiator Law Marketing uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, and decades of experience to outperform the competition. To learn more, go to gladiatorlawmarketing.com, where you can schedule a free marketing consultation. Attorney Daniel J. Siegel is a nationally recognized authority on ethics, technology, data protection, and cybersecurity, civil litigation, and workers' compensation matters, and business workflow management, and the principal of both the law offices of Daniel J. Siegel and Integrated Technology Services. His practice includes representing attorneys in disciplinary matters, providing professional responsibility guidance to attorneys and firms, serving as appellate counsel, representing individuals in workers' compensation and personal injury matters. In short, Dan handles the types of matters that keep attorneys awake at night. Dan, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Hey, so tell me a little bit more about your law firm, Daniel J. Siegel, LLC, and kind of what you guys specialize in. I kind of summed it up there, but tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, we're an unusual firm. It's the same thing we tell clients and everyone else who works with us. We do some of the things that typical law firms do, but because of additional expertise that we have, we do a little more. So when I went out on my own, which is now coming on 18 years ago, after being with two firms in Philadelphia, I recognized that a lot of what I did over the years was tailored toward lawyers. We used newsletters, continuing education programs, and suddenly found myself in demand not only to do the things that the public sort of knew I did, but to help lawyers. Appellate writing, ethical guidance, representing them in disciplinary matters, areas that most lawyers don't handle and scare most lawyers. And they're what I always did, and said, well, we need to focus more on that because I'm in the Philadelphia area where every 3 seconds you're going to see an ad or see a billboard for lawyers. And I'm a little more low key than that. So we have a strong presence, but not on the highway. And this has worked out well because we're a niche firm and we have lawyers who we represent, from solos to lawyers in large firms who are making moves and need confidential guidance. And we sort of do it all. And, from a very, comfortable location just outside the city.
You're the first person I've talked to whose niche is representing other lawyers. What do you find most kind of enjoyable about that?
Well, it's enjoyable in the sense that we try to help other lawyers be successful and productive. So I actually run a consulting firm that helps them with their workflow, but most of our clients are the lawyers in the practice, and they can find themselves with ethical issues. Sometimes it's just, what do I do? It's an odd situation, or it's a troubling situation, or they're leaving a firm and there are ethical rules and they don't know what they are. And they're comfortable with us because I'm a practicing lawyer. So I actually do what they do, but they have a comfort level, and, sometimes they get into disciplinary issues, and our goal is to help. And I like helping people, and lawyers, it's a different niche because, they're used to being the ones who know everything. And suddenly they have to rely on me and my associate in my office. And when we get them good results, it feels good.
Are the ethical issues often like serious? Like, if I go one way, I could get in major trouble, or is it just kind of guidance?
It's both. Lawyers often have questions. What do I do? This situation came up and they don't know how to handle it or what they should do, say, etc. I chair the Pennsylvania Bar's Legal Ethics Committee. So these are all things that, for the most part, we've confronted the committee as a whole. But then you do get the other side of that, where lawyers get into trouble and or potential trouble, and they can find disciplinary counsel knocking at their door. And depending on what they do or don't do, they could have anything from the charges dismissed or the assertions against them dismissed to disbarment. And we'll represent them, we'll give them guidance. The goal is to avoid the public disciplinary part of the process, and a lot of times we do, can't always, but it's the whole spectrum.
What goes into advising somebody on ethical matters like that? Is it your knowledge and background and your expertise, so you can just say yes or no, or is there more to? Is it more nuanced than that?
Depends. So I'll give you an example, but just it's one. Lawyers are guided by what's called the rules of professional conduct, and candidly, most of them have never really read them or don't know what they say. We know what they say. I have a copy sitting at my desk. I lecture on it. I write about it all the time. I'm familiar with them. But sometimes they just don't know what to do, or they've pushed the envelope, and then they're really nervous, or they get an inquiry from disciplinary counsel, which doesn't always mean they're going to get into trouble. And there isn't much we haven't seen. And because I have particular expertise in sort of technology and social media, the cutting edge things, that's a lot of where lawyers are getting into trouble. And we actually know about it, and have seen it and can give them the advice, or this is how you avoid the problem. So we'll help. We have one firm, we help them with all of their marketing, what should be on there, what shouldn't, so that they don't run into that. Another lawyer did some things in terms of finding information about one of his clients in a paramour and sort of pushed the envelope, and we had to help him work his way through disciplinary counsel. So all that stuff comes up. Plus, lawyers who get into trouble because they do things that are wrong.
Okay. How did you know, when and how did you know that you wanted to become a lawyer?
Well, it was sort of, in college, my dream was originally to be a sports writer. And if I, in an ideal world, I'd be out there covering the Phillies, or this week, the Eagles, because I love sports. Mm-hmm. And I worked as a writer, and I've always been a writer. And that's always my first love. And I realized in college, even though it was a long time ago, that maybe sports writing wasn't the right place for me, because you need to get a break. And I didn't want to write high school sports in central Pennsylvania for years, and knew that lawyers, one of the skills that's important is writing. And so that skill led me to decide to be a lawyer. We write a ton. We have one of the larger appellate practices of any firm in our state. And we don't write like lawyers. We write concise. Our briefs are short, to the point, and effective. We're more like journalists. And it's way more fun to write that and to win. I've tried cases, 7-figure cases, but there's something about winning the battle in an appeal that's even more exciting. And a lot of it is the skill of how you nuance your words and point things out. And that's been a skill of mine.
Where did you go to law school, and how did you kind of get started?
I went to law school at Temple University in Philadelphia. My first, or really my first long-term job, they had me do some appeals early on, and it was clear that it was a good niche, plus all the other things. And I always kept my fingers in it. Now we've had so many appellate cases that have changed the law, that have helped people. And there's a feeling of satisfaction there that you can't match, at least not for me, in any other way. You can get a $1 zillion verdict, and that's wonderful. And I love those opportunities. But when you change the law and it impacts everyone in the future, that's an even better feeling for me.
It sounds like the desire to help people is a strong pull for you to be an attorney. Was that you talked a lot about writing when you made your decision to go into law? Was helping people something you discovered along the way, or did you know that was something you'd be doing as well?
I think it's something I've always done, even in college. And I still don't know exactly how, but I got involved in the movement to control gun violence. That was in the 80s when we were talking about Saturday night specials, not what we have now. And I got involved in that over the years. Then I worked with other groups. I was an elected official locally for 13 years. Now I'm on the board of the Anti Defamation League, trying to work against some of the hate that's out there. So I've always sort of wanted to help people. And lawyers get to do that in many cases. But I've always kept my feet in social causes, things that really matter to me. Uh, and that's been, I had a mentor, I think, who helped instill that in me, but that was always there. The first time I wrote about gun violence, I was a sophomore in college, and it was 1978. And people back then really weren't talking about it. And it certainly wasn't the kind of news it is in today's world.
What led you to you talked about kind of your early experience. At what point did you decide now's the time where I kind of go out on my own?
I'd worked primarily for two prominent firms in Philadelphia for many years, and left both with very good terms. And one of the things we do is help lawyers leave on good or very good or better terms. Uh, but I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to make sure I could sort of control my life, which you don't always have when someone else is your boss. And so I'm thinking, what do I want to do? And, my wife said to me, she's like, your father, your grandfathers all ran their own businesses. They weren't lawyers, but they all could do it. And so can you. And so I left and had no clients when I started both of my businesses. And that's obviously changed. And it was that desire. And, I could do what I wanted to do, or more of what I wanted to do, while still taking my kids to school every day so that my kids knew me. And, I think they like me. And there's a value to that that you can't ever replace.
What did you do to kind of get your first clients?
Uh, well, I always had an attorney network of attorneys who referred me the traditional clients, the people injured at work or in an accident and those types of things. But we also focus here on helping a lot of the neighbors, and they know that, like, right wills and the things that people need in a typical, suburban neighborhood. But I also, lawyers just started calling me. Can you help me write? Can you help me with this brief? I've got this ethical issue. And it became very clear that they wanted our guidance. They knew me, they trusted me. Their information's confidential, obviously. And they sort of came to me. Um, for a variety of things. And then this practice sort of opened up into the way that it's developed. And it's a unique boutique.
It sounds like you come from a lineage of kind of entrepreneurship. Was there anything about running a business, maybe that you didn't expect, even though you had a lot of legal training and legal experience?
Everything. As much as you prepare, and I did all my legwork. And in fact, the firm I left, I stayed there for a month before I opened on my own because they needed me to write one brief. And they paid me for a month to write one brief in a federal appeal. And I thought, okay, I'm ready. But you don't realize what you're going to confront. And so there were things I didn't expect. Then the economy tanked. And then kids go to college, and suddenly you're confronted with all of those things. Then you don't realize just how much is involved. I knew a lot. I learned a ton. Um, and in fact, one of the most popular CLE continuing education programs we do is mistakes I have made, where you talk about things that you did that, if I had known, I wouldn't have done that then or now. And those are fascinating programs. They're wonderfully popular.
Is there like a most memorable kind of learning experience, where you're like, oh, I wish I had known that?
I wish I knew how much paperwork And I'm in a paperless office. We've never had any paper records, but the paperwork, all of the things that you've got to do to operate a business, from just local licenses to every kind of tax and form, and for lawyers, it's handling your trust account. A lot of lawyers screw that up. We help them a lot, but you got to do it right. You got to manage the books. And then once I grew and started having employees, it's the responsibility of having to pay them, because they get paid no matter what. They go first. I'm always last in line. Um, but I think it's the financial world of just how much you have to do that's really surprising. And I think it hits a lot of us, like, wow, I didn't know I had to do all that.
You give advice to a lot of attorneys. That's kind of your thing. What if there's somebody who's just kind of entering the legal industry now, based on your experience and all of your experience in helping other lawyers? What is the number one piece of advice you would give them?
That's actually an easy question. Don't ever allow yourself to be pigeonholed into just one practice area. And while all of us concentrate on certain areas, I don't handle, for example, criminal cases. Um, but I never did just one type of thing. I always had the appellate work in there. I was always doing that at every firm, no matter what the practice. I was always involved in ethical stuff because it interested me, because it's a lot more than don't just steal. Don't steal from from clients. And those options, to be able to not be just stereotyped as the only thing you do is whatever workers comp, really helped in the long run. Because they're lawyers. If you ask them, they know. Some know me because I'm a workers comp lawyer. Others know me because I do appeals. Others know me for ethics. And while it's harder to get a unified sort of um, profile, those all bring me business. And so if one area slows down, I have these other areas I can go to, which makes a big difference.
Sure, sure. Hey, I have one more question for you, but first, tell me how people can find out more about Daniel J. Siegel LLC, your firm.
They can contact me. Our website is Daniel J. Siegel, DanielJSiegel.com. And we're out there on the web and in social media and all of that. And you can usually, you search my name, you're going to find me, although there's some other prominent people with identical names. But I'm the lawyer outside of Philadelphia, and I write a ton. My 15th book just was released last week. So
Wow, awesome. Hey, well, that'll be my final question for you. Tell me about that book.
it's actually the second edition of my book, How to Do More in Less Time. It's a productivity guide that I co-author with a colleague named Allison Joes. And it's practical advice on how to manage your time. One of my goals as an attorney opening on my own was that I always wanted to be home for dinner. And granted, I get up really early and I'm in the office at 7, but I've been home for dinner almost every night since I went on my own. And the book has productivity tips from Allison and from me. And then there's a whole section on technology, which is both of us, but people know me for, we get a lot done fast, but you don't lose sight of the family. So the book helps you with all of that. And there was so much demand for the first edition that we just published the second through the American Bar Association, but it's sold, widely elsewhere.
Well, that's great. Is there one principle that I don't want to discourage anybody from buying the book. Is there one principle you can share with us for getting more done in less time, and that would cause us to try and get more information about that?
Well, we always talk about a don't-do list, things you shouldn't do today or whatever. But one of my favorite things is that every day you should have a 3-item I must do list. The 3 things that if you get them done today, you've been productive. So today I have that list, and 2 of them are working on briefs and a third deals with some client matters. And those are going to be it. Is when I finish here, I'm going to go back to writing the one thing for the one client, an attorney client. And then after that, move on to a brief, and then later in the day, do the other stuff.
Okay.
So,
Sounds good. Very nice. Hey, Dan, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
So long, everybody. Thanks for listening to 15 Minutes. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.